Hey, what's up guys, I'm Henry. Today I'm here with this guy. This is the Samsung Galaxy S10 Lite, and since I do love reviewing cameras, this guy came out in the beginning of this year, 2020, and this has this triple camera system on its back, and it has three different lenses. It has, of course, its main lens that shows at 26mm, I guess. It has an ultra wide angle lens, and of course it has a new lens. This is the macro lens, macro photography, to take those close-up shots. So for the past 3 weeks, I've done a few tests. Also, since I do have my iPhone 11, I've also put this on perspective on different pictures, videos, low light and everything. So you will see the difference between a mid-range from Samsung and also a flagship from another brand, Apple. So yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right at it, and I hope you enjoy it.
So the camera menu offers plenty of options and features that you can play with. It also supports a Pro Mode menu for pictures and videos, but you don't get much options to play with except changing the ISO values with a maximum up to 800, it's nothing, which is very limited, I would say. You get to change the white balance values and exposure values, and that's it, not anything to actually feel excited of. I'll start with the video department real quick. So the S10 Lite can record up to 4K 60fps just like any flagship smartphones, and the footage comes out to look actually nice in daylight situations. Now you're looking at 4K 30fps video. The quality is good, the stabilization is great, and as you can record, you can also shift to ultra wide lens to get much more in the field of view without actually stopping the video, and stabilization keeps working great. Now you're looking at 4K 60fps, which delivers nice and sharp footage, but not ideal when you are in the move because of the lack of, as you can tell, stabilization. The S10 Lite also offers super steady stabilization for video, but image quality decreases to the point where I don't recommend it at all. As you are looking to this example, the 4K 30p on my left side has a very good stabilization, and you don't need the super steady in exchange to this very decreased quality. The S10 Lite offers awesome slow motion alternatives as well. You can get 240fps at 1080p, but also super slow motion of 90-60fps in 720p for a short moment, and I would say that it looks clean, especially for social media. Now let's have a look at picture quality. First of all, I should mention that I like the AI that Samsung offers, which I don't get it on the iPhone. Now you notice the HDR option on the right top. You cannot have it if you use a full 48 megapixel camera. To me, HDR capability makes a smartphone camera more colorful and gives the right dynamic range, and it just protects shadows, data and highlights. Look at this example, look at the laptop, look through the windows. The 48 megapixel picture without HDR has completely blown out the details, the highlights, right? Well, how about pixel quality? Well, of course, with the 48 megapixel you'll see more pixels and clarity on the picture when zooming in, but you'll have to compromise for the HDR capabilities. So to top this off, I would recommend you guys using 12 megapixel mostly, especially outside, to save the highlights and dynamic range for your pictures, but maybe for indoor shots or places where dynamic range is not very important to you, but pixels is most important, then use the full 48 megapixels. Now let's have a look at live focus video.
So you should see right now that my face is separated and from the background with a blur effect, and I've set the blur effect at its maximum. It was a 7. So this is how it looks. So I'm not sure if it's going to actually lose me while I move around. I'll try to come closer. You can tell me in the comment section below, since right now I cannot see that because of course smartphones don't have a screen on their rear and I cannot tell. Now we're shooting 4K 30fps just to see if there is a slight drop in performance when we shoot actually live focus video, which I guess will have a problem there because I saw the video for a sec and I thought that the quality is like decreased. So with the live focus video you should expect the quality to decrease, maybe in perfect lighting condition outside, maybe in midday the performance would look awesome, but in indoor shooting I wouldn't sacrifice the performance for for just the blurring background. You can just find a background that suits you and you be awesome with that. So this is 4K 30 FPS.
Now let's change perspective and let's have a look on how the S10 Lite compares to a flagship, the iPhone 11. I'm using Adobe Lightroom for this comparison section. Starting off with daylight pictures, the first one is a sharpness test. Zooming right in the middle, both look sharp, right? But the way I see it, seems that the Samsung adds heavy sharp filters that make the image look a little not very compelling, not very professional. Something that I noticed in the S10 Lite as well was the softness around the edges of the pictures. You can see the difference with the iPhone 11 on the left and the S10 Lite on the right. I guess cheaper phone comes with cheaper camera lenses and optics. Let's move on to another picture. First glance, both pictures looking nice. Slightly different styles, approaches though. I like colors on the iPhone better in general. Zooming in, we can tell more. We can see nice details of wall on both pictures. If we look at the solar panel far away, we notice that iPhone has blurred the background better, even though I pressed focus for both on the wall. The f1.8 aperture on the iPhone versus f2.0 on the Samsung, I guess that makes a difference. Let's move on with another picture. Look at this bench. Nice picture and pretty colors. First glance, iPhone seems fuller in colors and has more life in it. Zooming in, both pictures looking sharp. The Samsung on the right seemed to have over-sharpened a bit. Looking a bit ahead, the dynamic range on the iPhone seemed to do a better job, but look at this tree. The iPhone has brushed it all over in black, while the S10 Lite shows and has actually saved up details by pulling off the shadows. But looking at the house ahead, the iPhone looks so much better. This is an afternoon scenario. In this case, I took a picture while I was walking to see how each could actually freeze the scene. I noticed that iPhone uses a faster shutter, especially on the move, while the S10 Lite took it slower, hence you can notice more motion blur around. The S10 Lite was a bit more noisy too. If we look at the back part of this side window and the trailer behind, completely overexposed on the S10 Lite. Another afternoon scene. In general, I noticed the dynamic range was handled better by the iPhone, way better I would say, pulling off the shadows, exposing everything correctly and well balanced. The S10 Lite, as you could see, shows to be darker and sharpness starts to fade out. Here's another example. The S10 Lite just cannot beat a flagship, right? In these very difficult scenarios, and examples could go on and on. Also, this shot was taken around afternoon, both looking different. If we zoom into the watch, we can notice the S10 Lite has managed to pull off the blacks, right? But picture in overlay looks washed out on the S10 Lite. iPhone just looks, better, more natural colors, fuller and richer details. Personally, I would go with the iPhone. Another late afternoon picture. Look at this motorbike. You can guess now right away which is which, right? The iPhone again delivers plenty of colors, seems fuller, even though when zooming in, the iPhone could seem a bit grainier than the S10 Lite though. By the way, the S10 Lite ironically has a larger camera sensor than the iPhone 11. You can also anytime see data information on the right as I describe pictures. iPhone, for example, has used in this case a faster shutter to grasp also more sharpness from the picture, hence has increased the ISO value. The S10 Lite, on the other hand, is using slower shutter and lower ISO values to actually deliver more brightness than sharpness, which I don't like the compromise. This shot was taken during night, but both have lightened up the scene in an unreal way. The iPhone showing warmer tone and the Samsung cooler tone. Now the image has more light on the S10 Lite that has played a slower shutter but has lost some sharpness, as you can tell, while the iPhone with a faster shutter at 1/30th of a second has captured the right dose of sharpness. Now I like the white balance better on the S10 Lite, don't get me wrong, but I prefer better the details on the iPhone. Which one would you compromise for? Using third-party apps such as Lightroom apps can fix the white balance just like in a sec. So I guess I will again go with the iPhone, even though the S10 Lite, believe me, has done a great job. Now, let's see some indoor tests. Again, while zooming in you can tell many differences. The slight amount of blurriness on the S10 Lite, the poor dynamic range there, the bars lacking the proper blackness and the plenty of noise in general, 2500 ISO compared to 640 ISO on the iPhone. Well, we should remember the iPhone is a flagship and costs double the S10 Lite. So let's keep this always in mind. In general, if I wouldn't show picture comparison to a flagship, this image taken on the S10 Lite is completely useful and fine, and maybe with a little bit of Lightroom touch, it could look even better. Another indoor picture. At first glance, the one on the right looks brighter for the S10 Lite, and this is in night mode because normal mode lacked a lot of details. Now zooming in on both, you can see plenty of noise on the S10 Lite. Look at the metadata. The iPhone has used a shutter of 1/8 of a sec, ISO 500, and the S10 Lite on the other hand has used a shutter of 1/10 of a sec and with an ISO of 2000. See? This is one thing I didn't actually like about the S10 Lite. The camera algorithm when taking pictures, especially during night, was not smart. It could have used a slower shutter and a lower ISO value, right? Or in the scenario with a car, it could have used a faster shutter to grasp the details, but no. Anyways, moving around you can see lots of noise in overall to the S10 Lite picture, and place to place losing details and colors way more accurate on the iPhone. This is another interesting scenario. The S10 Lite couldn't grasp details out of fluids. In this case with this Apple, iPhone to the other hand killing it. The S10 Lite always sort of blurry when it comes to such scenarios. Elevator shots. You can try yourself with different brands, even with your smartphone that you may have. Each smartphone reacts a little different. In this case, the S10 Lite just couldn't deliver a nice picture on the elevator, even though I tried it many times. iPhone takes very balanced, nice shots, so another win for the iPhone here. This is in my room late at night, pitch dark scenario with some lights from outside. Two different approaches, the iPhone on the warm tone side and the Samsung on the cool bluish tone side. The closer to reality was the iPhone though, but if we zoom in, both are noisy, maybe a bit cleaner for the Samsung, hence a bigger sensor. If we travel on the edges though, we will notice the S10 Lite starts to lose sharpness and become soft. Night mode versus normal mode. I found that night mode in all cases gives more clarity to the picture, texture, stronger colors, better in overall. It is worth using it on the S10 Lite. I found to actually work pretty well consistently. The only thing I didn't like about night mode on the S10 Lite is that it doesn't trigger slow shutter a lot. It seems like it's limited to 1/4 of a second from all the tests that I did, hence it had to always bump up the ISO, to balance things out, which introduces noise. But I guess we cannot ask much from a $450 phone, right? Now let's have a quick look at the front selfie camera. It has a single camera placed up in the middle that shoots 32 megapixels with a 25mm focal length. If you use the full 32 megapixel mode, you lack the HDR just as in the case of rear main camera, which was 48 megapixel, which means you lose HDR capabilities, colors of the sky could be blown or lights on the street could miss, etc. The quality of pictures is good in general and much acceptable, but white balance is not very consistent from scene to scene. For indoor shots, you also get night mode for better pictures. Here's an example. Honestly, it makes a difference, right? About video recording, the front camera allows up to 4K 30 FPS, but I found out that its default mode at 1080p 30 FPS offers way better image stabilization for vlogs, and colors seem nicer to me.
Alright everybody, now that we saw the test, I really hope you enjoyed it. And now if I'm going to rate this camera from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, I would say very well around 7 camera. So of course you are paying for a mid-range budget phone, which is awesome. And now here are the pros of this phone. So you get an awesome 6.7-inch screen. It's a solid display. It's very beautiful. I would also say that the build quality of this phone is heck of a build, because they have introduced this new glass-stick material, which is a mix between glass and plastic. Believe me, it feels very good and very firm and solid, but I really love it for my big hands. I really love this 6.7-inch screen. Another pro of this is the battery life. Every full charge has taken me like in a full 2-day cycle of battery life, and that's awesome. The positive thing about this is its chipset. I mean, this has built-in the Snapdragon 855, which was last year's chipset for flagships phone. For example, Samsung Galaxy Note 10, Samsung Galaxy S10, and other flagship Android phones. And just imagine that this phone has 8 GB of RAM. You get also the sweet spot of memory, 128 GB. You also get micro SD if you want more memory. There's also a version that you can buy for 512 GB of this, but to me, 128 GB is just the sweet spot. Since this costs just half the price of the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, of course, they have compromised a few things to actually separate this mid-range phone from a flagship phone. And one being, since they have used this new material Glastic, which means it's not pure glass, it means that this doesn't support wireless charging. For some this could be a deal, for some it's not. To be honest, for me it could be a deal because, you know, my iPhone 11, since my iPhone 10, I've always charged them through wirelessly. I just put my iPhone there and, you know, it charges itself without me. Well, it's not a big compromise, but of course this is one of the things that separates this from a flagship model. Another thing is that Samsung Galaxy S10 Lite isn't weather sealed, which means it's not IP rated, because of course, again, it's not a flagship, so they have removed a few things. Another thing, well, this has been seen also in the other, let's say, flagship models. It doesn't support 3.5mm jack, but if you buy the S10 Plus version of last year, of course, it's a flagship phone, and you also get the 3.5mm jack. So with this, you also need to buy the dongle, of course. Another negative side, it's one speaker side. Of course, when you watch a video through YouTube or a movie or play a game, you will just hear it on one side, which is mono, and it's just not a good experience, considering when you have a phone that actually releases sounds from both speakers from both sides, which is stereo, and that's of course way better experience also for your ease. In overall, I guess this is an awesome phone when you consider the battery life, the big screen, and of course acceptable cameras, let's face it, and yeah, and also of course it's very beautiful as you look at it, right? Yeah, that was my review for the camera of the Samsung Galaxy S10 Lite. If you're interested to buy this guy, I'm going to leave the links in the description below. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'm Henry, have a good one, bye bye.